This is Patricia Sanford, Director of the Maryland Archaeological Conservation Lab, and I would like to welcome you to Jefferson Patterson Park and Museum's Site Tour Saturday. Today we are back at the Smith St. Leonard site, occupied between 1711 and 1754. Ed Cheney, the project's lead archaeologist, will share the results of 18 years of archaeological excavation at the site.
Hi, I'm Ed Cheney, and we're back here at the Smith St. Leonard site. In the last video, we learned about what history can tell us about the Smiths and the enslaved Africans who lived with them here on their plantation during the colonial period. And frankly, it isn't all that much. But fortunately, archaeology can tell us a lot about their lives, and we have been doing major excavations here since 2002. Archaeologists are often asked, how do you know where to dig? At this site, we had three sources of information that guided us. The first was a map drawn around 1770, showing the buildings and landscape features that were visible at that time. Although the Smith St. Leonard site had been abandoned in 1754, the ruins of some of its buildings were still present, and through our work, we have proved that the map was extremely accurate in where it placed them. The second guide we had was an archaeological survey. When we first started working here, we dug 1-foot diameter holes every 25 feet across the entire site and mapped out where the concentrations of artifacts were. These concentrations indicated the locations of structures and activity areas. Third, we had a specialist come in to explore the site with a ground-penetrating radar and a magnetometer, looking for remains buried in the ground. When we combined all three sources of information about the site, we had a good guide for where to focus our excavations. One of the first sites we investigated was the Smith family's brick house, built right here. As you can see, we are right along the riverbank, and unfortunately, in our excavations, we discovered that over the last couple hundred years, most of the house was washed away into the Patuxent. In fact, when we first started digging here, chunks of its brick foundation were still lying on the beach below the bluff. But we do know from written descriptions that the house had a cross-shaped floor plan. There is a similar cross-shaped house from the same time period called Cedar Hill, located just a few miles from here, and we use that as a model for what the Smith house would have looked like. Fortunately, traces of the other buildings at the site are still intact below the ground. One was a storehouse for keeping all sorts of supplies. The radar said it should be a square building with a projection on one side and a 5-foot deep cellar, and that is exactly what we found. The projection turned out to be an exterior ramp that led down into the cellar. The building was unusual in that it was constructed on wood posts that were set deep into the floor of the cellar. We found an interesting artifact in the hole for one of those posts, which we will show you in the next video. Another building we excavated was the kitchen, measuring 30 feet by 20 feet and located a short distance from the Smith house. If you were wealthy like the Smiths, you often had a separate kitchen to keep your house cooler in the summer and to minimize the risk of fire damage to your residence. The kitchen had a small cellar in front of the fireplace, which was absolutely filled with food remains, pottery and utensils, personal belongings, and architectural artifacts that indicated the kitchen had been remodeled at one time. Next to the kitchen was a building that had a drainage ditch running off the corner, a buried barrel used for holding water on the inside, and an ash-filled pit that might have been part of a soap-making operation. Together, they suggest this building was a laundry we know was here by 1715, which makes it one of the oldest laundries in the Chesapeake region. Also close to the kitchen were a number of small buildings, 10 or 15 feet on a side and heated by simple hearths. These were dwellings for the enslaved Africans who worked in the Smith's house, kitchen, and other buildings located here. Other enslaved laborers worked in the fields and lived in cabins scattered across the plantation. The dwellings often had small storage pits dug into the floor. These pits could hold foodstuffs and personal belongings, including African objects you might want to hide from the English, who could confiscate them. We found some of these artifacts at the site, and they will be discussed in a future video. Further out in the field, we found a large building, 24 by 40 feet, built on posts stuck in the ground. Two lines of very large posts created a central passageway across the building. A number of small rooms lined the passage. We recovered lots of artifacts like stirrups, spurs, and bridle bits at the site, indicating that this was a horse stable. The small rooms were stalls for the horses, while the passage was used to get the animals out of the stable or to park carts and carriages. The large passage posts were so big because they supported the weight of a hayloft above the passage. The floors of the stalls sloped down to the passage, which was sunken so you could more easily muck out the straw and manure in the stalls. And the radar even revealed a fence that marked the adjoining paddock where the horses could be exercised. Very few colonial stables have ever been excavated, so this makes our work on this one very important. Thanks to archaeology, we now know a lot about everyday life here at the Smith St. Leonard plantation in the early 1700s. In our next video, we're going to discuss some artifacts that reveal a fascinating, little-known aspect of that life, so you're going to want to come back.